have Shweta Vernekar, who is a senior program associate with us. She works on air quality and sustainable mobility projects here at Parisar. She will be taking us through contextualizing why we are doing what we are doing with the dashboard and why we are doing it. And she'll also take us through a live demonstration of the dashboard. Then this will be followed by Ashfaq Sheikh, who is the country head of the Domo team here, and who will be sharing more about the dashboard and the broader intent behind it. And then in the third section, we will have Ranjit Gargil, who is the program director at Parisar. He will be walking us through the key insights of the PMPML's 2025 data using the dashboard, how PMPML has performed in its throughout the year. So we'll be having that. And in the last section, section of our webinar at the end, we will be opening the floor for questions, feedback, and also discussions, mostly for questions. But we will be only allowing questions through the chat box. So throughout the webinar, at whatever point in time, if you want to drop in your questions, do drop in your questions only through the chat. Thank you. I will hand it over to Shweta to start the webinar now.
Thank you, Tanzeel. Let me just start with sharing my screen. Yeah, while this is loading. I think I want to reiterate once more that, we are overwhelmed with the kind of response that we've received on this webinar. And we hope that the next hour and a half is as engaging and as insightful as you would have expected it to be. So I'll be taking you through the dashboard, but I think before we even start with, just dive into the dashboard, it's really important to know the why and how of, why this whole concept or the dashboard itself. So I think always, especially when it comes to tech-based solutions or interventions, it's always very, very important to ask this question, that why is the need to do this and what outcome will it serve? And we always start all our processes with this kind of thinking. And when we actually sat to think about this, that why do we really need a dashboard for the PMPML data? I think these 4 points really came very, very starkly, very, very in a focused manner. Here, I would like to also mention that I think there is a lot of credit to be given to PMPML here, because PMPML, which is the public transport, public bus company of Pune and Pimpri-Chinchwad, it has been putting out very, very consistent data for more than 10 years now. Our dashboard itself has data from 2019. And I don't think that is something that is being done very, very proactively by city bus systems in our country. So kudos to PMPML in the first place to be doing that without asking or without really filing for RTIs or doing any kind of other requests. This data is there on their website. It is open. It is uploaded frequently. It is uploaded periodically. And this is something that is this is the starting point of, in fact, the whole dashboard conversation itself. So this data is being published, as I said, for more than 10 years. There are 3 sheets that PMPML has been publishing for some years now. One is the overall performance data of all the fleet that it has. One is the e-bus performance sheet, and one is the BRT bus performance sheet. We'll dive a little bit deeper and get to know which sheets we are looking at in the dashboard and so on. But these 3 things are being published regularly. The data itself is huge. It is a 5-page PDF document with a lot of heads. And we'll also go over the whole sheet itself a little bit quickly, so that we know the kind of things that are being published by PMPML every month. It is consistent in its format. It has, the heads have remained constant for now so many years, more than 10 years for sure. And that itself, the format, the consistency, the expanse, and the richness itself is something that really, really, honestly, just begs for analysis. So this data is the kind of data which you can look at and you can make 100 possibilities, 100 analysis to find out things about different sort of parameters of a bus service running. And I know a lot of people we've looked at who have registered for this webinar, and we know that it's a mix of a lot of people. It is people who have been working on transport. It is just bus enthusiasts, citizens groups. So this data really lends itself to all these stakeholders in different ways. The only thing to be done is to analyze it intelligently and give out a trend analysis or an insight which will be actionable. So the why really lies in this part, where we really wanted to say that, okay, this data is there, but something really good can be done with it, and the dashboard can be a step towards it. And lastly, I think, as I mentioned, even for this webinar, so many diverse stakeholders have joined. And the dashboard also promises then to serve these diverse stakeholders, because it essentially simplifies data and it presents it in a manner which gives you some understanding for action. So that's the why of the dashboard. As I said, I would like to take you through. I just have to jump out of this presentation, and I'd like to show you the kind of data that PMPML is publishing. I'll just show you a snapshot, and then I'll zoom in a little bit to show you what is happening over here. So this is a 5-page PMPML monthly statistics sheet. It has depot-wise information. So you can see that, these are all the depot names over here at the top. And then right up till the end, you have a lot of interesting data, which can be very, very simple and understandable in terms of just showing us, how many vehicles does PMPML hold, how many vehicles are there on the road every day, how many are hired, how many are their own, that data. Then you have stuff like there are also some technical things like number of schedules, number of trips, how many roads are off, how many buses are off the road on any given day, on any given month. uh, it has terminology like effective kilometers, it has terminology like dead kilometers, all of which are important pointers to one or the other aspect of PMPML's performance. So as you can see, I mean, I don't think if we were to look at this entire sheet today, it'll take us an entire webinar just to see what all they publish, but they do publish a lot of very, very interesting information, and they've been doing this consistently for the last more than 10 years. So just, I mean, we can share this sheet and it's there for anybody to see it online. So I just wanted to show you a snapshot of what is happening. They have tickets, how many tickets they issue, how many passes they issue, how many monthly passes are there, student passes are there. They also report on their accidents. So it's a lot of information is, I think, what generally comes out of it. And just looking at all of this data, I think we felt that this really warrants something that can, um, take you through what all of these data and all of these numbers really means. So that is where then we come to how do we actually do this? How do you look at this a sheet which is so complicated, which is so detailed, and then turn it into something which can be easy to understand, and it can quickly give you ideas on what can be done and how it can be done. So what we did for this is we collaborated with the platform, the company called Domo, and Ashfaq from Domo will be speaking about the platform itself and the experience of this whole dashboard building a little while later. But Domo really helped us to take this data in the format that it is right now and turn it into intelligible analysis in the matter of minutes. So I really do not have to do anything to the sheet. I have to just download the sheet in the PDF format that is there, and I have to upload it at the back end, which is like half a minute of work. And then in about 5 minutes, the sheet and the data in it is uploaded in the dashboard, and you can make sense of what it means. Here, I'd also like to mention that the data in the format that it is in right now, as an organization that has been working on public transport for many years, we have been analyzing this data on our own in Excel sheets, putting in formulas and doing whatnot. But one has to realize that this is not possible for everyone, and this is not definitely possible for journalists. This is not possible for citizen groups to do very easily. And that's why I think something like this really, really felt useful, and it really felt like this can have a lot of possibilities of use. So this is how we actually got to the dashboard. I think now is a good time to actually look at the dashboard itself. And let me just walk you through that. So yeah. So this is what the PMPML dashboard looks like. As I mentioned before, that the sheet itself has a lot of data. One process of filtering that we also did while building the dashboard was not to be a little judicious and say that okay, these are the criteria, or these are the kind of pointers that one would like to see on a dashboard, and that would make most sense to a commuter, to a journalist, to somebody who wants to take a decision in PMPML itself to look at and make a certain sense of it. So, of course, the dashboard does not have everything that the sheet has. We have picked and chosen a few things which are very, very essential to indicate the health of a public bus service. So let's just look at it sort of the way we have structured it. So as you can see, there are three main sort of heads over here. The first is the fleet management and operations. The second is ridership and the ticket profile. And the third is breakdowns and accidents. So let me just walk you through each of these tabs quickly, and then we can also look at what all can be done and how you can sort of select and look at things separately and differently to make sense of it. On top, you can also see that you can select the months that you want to look at, and you can also select the depots that you want to look at. Not all of the data that is there on the dashboard is depot specific, but some of the data is actually, it's interesting to look at it from a depot perspective. Let's look at fleet management and operations. In fleet management and operations, right on top, we have three very important characteristics. One is what is the percentage of the buses that are on the road, and the second is the planned versus the actual kilometers, and the third is how many kilometers per bus per day does PMPML really have. Right now, I have not selected any date. So right now it's showing the entire data that is there in the Domo backend. And you can see that just by looking at the graph over here of on-road bus percentage, you can see that there are breaks in between. So that clearly shows that there was no data. And generally, this is found to be the COVID period. But you can also see that there are certain peaks, there are certain dips, and that is exactly what we mean by intelligent analysis and trend analysis and insights, because that allows you to really ask the question, hey, what happened over here? You can also see that right from 2019 to 2020-25 December, Jan 2026, which is the latest data that we have, there has been an increase of 29.05% in the on-road buses. So on-road buses have really improved over the years. But yeah, the question of whether this improvement over a period of 7 to 8 years is good enough or not is something that has to be asked separately. The same with planned versus actual kilometers. It is just averaging out all of the time period, which is 2019 to up till now. Let's move forward and let's look at the bus fleet ownership. You know, how many of PMPML's buses are their own? How many are hired and how many are PPP based? You'll see, so the gray part is the hired buses and the red part is their own buses. And you can see that over the last year, there has been sort of a downward trend in the number of owned buses that PMPML has. So just by looking at the graph, I mean, we are going to get into the details of what the 2025 data tells us, but I just wanted to show that just by looking at the graph, you can make just these quick inferences that, okay, this is happening. So this is something that, that one can note and one can question about. So this is the bus fleet profile by ownership. You also have bus fleet profile by fuel, which now has become a very interesting feature with the coming of electric buses and CNG buses. And you can see that already, you know, diesel buses are very, very low in the total fleet. And there are CNG buses and there are electric buses as well. So this is also something which is important to look at. The next is, of course, buses available per lakh of population. This is something that I think we've been, us and a lot of other organizations working on buses and the need for more buses. We've harped on this long enough and loud enough so that even officials are now saying right up front that, yes, we need 60 buses per lakh population. And as you can see, we are swinging between 21 to 24 at the max all the time. And that's clearly not enough. But this is an important parameter to see that there has not been much improvement in the number of buses that the city should have had. We have next the planned buses versus the actual buses that are deployed. And you can see that the planned buses are higher and the actual buses are obviously lower, but you can also see that, at some point it has gone closer to what the actual buses must have been. So one can also use this to sort of see, okay, why must that have been happened, and what may PMPML have done to actually make it happen and improve the performance, or whether it's just something that has no specific analysis as such. The next two graphs are planned versus cancelled kilometers. Again, a parameter which will show you whether your buses are actually running as much as they have planned, and which typically translates to the fact that if there are more cancelled kilometers, it means that the buses have been cancelled, or there have been breakdowns, or there have not been enough buses at all. So it's a very important parameter to look at. And the last one, the second last one on this page, is the number of routes. This again is very interesting to note, especially if you juxtapose this with the number of buses that any bus company has. If the number of routes has increased and the number of buses hasn't, then you can make inferences to say that probably then there are more waiting periods, or the buses are more crowded. So, such kind of correlations is the second sort of a level that you can take once you are well versed with this whole bus assessment terminology. And this is something which adds an interest layer to the whole basic data that you see over here. The last thing on this is the fuel type and the kilometer per unit of fuel that you're actually using. It's interesting to note here that obviously diesel gives you more kilometers per unit, CNG a little bit lesser or about the same, and electric gives you the lowest. But then of course you have other benefits to that, and that is something that is not really quantified on this dashboard, but it gives you a perspective on what all of these look like. This little square over here is the cost per bus per kilometer. It is a very important metric, and you can see that it's a yearly metric, it's not a month-wise metric. So you can see that in since 2019, the cost per bus per kilometers has increased by 11.8%. So this is also something to note, which also then ties to this whole thing of buses, the bus company making profit or loss, and the whole discussion that circles around that. Let me now take you to the second tab. The second tab is again a very interesting one, which is the ridership and the ticket profile. The first thing is how many people does PMPML carry in a day, and you can see that it is about 11 lakh passengers, 11 lakh trips every day. Somewhere it is also 10. It's interesting to compare this also with the earlier years, and you can do that by selecting the tab over here, or by selecting the months, and you will realize just by looking at this graph that 2025 and 2024, there has been a reduction in the ridership. And we'll talk about this more when we actually talk about the PMPML performance for 2025. Then you're looking at the average passengers per bus per day, something that is also very, very directly relatable to the number of buses that you're holding and the change in the trends that you have over here. Next, we are looking at the earning from ticket sales. We are looking at the earning from daily passes, and we are looking at the earnings from monthly passes, because PMPML offers all of these three things. This is, of course, the entire data, and we'll look at another tab which shows just 1 year. But this is also something that you can look at, and you can click on this tab and you can get a sense of, how much earning comes from daily passes, how much comes from monthly passes. This is also an interesting feature that has been added to show, and also then to be able to comment on this whole profit loss making discussion that always comes up. Earning per passenger per day. This is approximately, how much is a passenger paying per ticket. Also can be sort of correlated with the average trip distance of a PMPML bus. And here you are seeing this huge spike, which comes from the fare hike in May this year. These kinds of things are especially very, very interesting to look at, all the spikes and the dips, and they should really, ideally, lead you to asking questions and getting answers to understand why this happens, whether this should happen, and what kind of outcomes are you looking at when this happens. Then you're looking at the earning per bus per day, which again is an important metric when it comes to how the buses are faring in terms of performance and ridership. you can see that again after May there has been a spike because of the fare hike, and more on that in our second section. It also shows you the traffic earning. It shows you the modal share, how much is coming from passenger tickets, how much is coming from daily and monthly passes, and how much is coming from student passes. I won't dwell on this too much over here because this is too many years totally. So let's look at it in a different scenario. But this is also something that you're looking at. You're looking at the revenue of PMPML in just one shot. And you're also looking at the share in terms of, you now know that a majority comes from passenger tickets and student passes is the lowest share. Daily monthly passes comes the next. The last tab is the breakdowns and accidents. Again, a very, very important feature when it comes to PMPML performance or any bus service performance for that matter. It shows you on an average how many breakdowns happen in a day. It shows you the monthly percentage of breakdowns. It shows you the total accidents that are happening. And compared to last year, I mean, I don't think we should look at this in this perspective, but let's look at it in the year selection perspective. But it also shows you compared to last year what has been the reduction in the number of accidents. This graph is again interesting. It shows you how many breakdowns there were per 10,000 kilometers. And even this kind of a graph is something that really highlights where it has gone up, where it has gone down, and something to really think about whether, you know, are breakdowns also cyclical in nature and things like that. This is another graph which is related to breakdowns, which is the graph shows breakdowns in PMPML's own buses. For some reason, the statistics sheet does not have data of breakdowns in the hired buses. Again, something which is very important to note, and I'm sure that PMPML has it, but it has to be added in the statistics sheet. But even in their own buses, you can sort of look at each month and say that, you know, in a particular month, it has been too high or it has performed well, and why or how that could have happened. And the last graph in the dashboard is of the accidents. Again, when we are looking at the accidents, it is interesting to look at accidents of both the hired buses and their own buses. And just by looking at the graph, it feels and that the hired accidents in the hired buses are much more than those in their own buses. But this then also has to be considered with the fact that there are more hired buses in PMPML's fleet than their own buses. For something like this, some more detailed analysis is then required of finding out how many hired buses are there, how many breakdowns are there in those buses, and then sort of make sense of the whole thing. But at a snapshot, at a glance, it is showing you that hired buses have more accidents than their own buses. This is just the whole dashboard at a glance. Let me also show you one or two interesting things that you can do using this dashboard. So this is now another just window where I have selected the year 2025 by clicking on this drop down. I can select only 3 months, I can select 2 months, I can select 1 month of this year and 1 month of last year, and if I want to compare. So this selector basically allows me to select the time span, and I have looked at 2025. So here I think I don't know, I don't want to comment too much right now on the 2025 graphs because that is something that we are going to go in a lot of detail in the second part of the webinar. So just, I think, important to note here that you can just select a year and you will get to know the performance of that year. Just something interesting, if I want to leave you with one thing with you, which, you know, stood out in 2025, I think it would be the fare hike and the kind of graph that then you then see. So you can see that the earnings have sort of peaked quite a bit after the fare hike, which was done in May. And something like this you can look at when you're looking at the entire year's data. Another thing that you can do, which I mentioned right now, is to look at 1 month in a particular year and the same month in the last year. Because as we all know, public transport data and public transport ridership tends to be cyclical. There are months in which there is higher ridership because of schools, colleges, There is lower ridership because of holidays in schools. There is higher ridership because of festivals. So all these things considered, I think it makes sense to look at 1 month and the same month last year to be able to say anything which is logically correct. So I'm looking at June 2024 and June 2025, and you can see that. So let's just look at the on-road buses. For example, the on-road buses from last year, they've gone up by just 0.53%, and that's probably not that great. I say probably because that's also something that we will be discussing on later. That how do you decide whether a certain improvement or a certain decline is good or bad, and how good or bad is it? That's something that we will be discussing later. But yeah, let me just show you something interesting in terms of, yeah, maybe we look at the number of routes. So the number of routes this year in June 2024 was 385, and the same month the next year it was 389. So there has not been a much increase in the number of routes. Ridership and I think breakdowns is something that is interesting when you compare month on month. So if you look at here, you will see that the average passengers per bus per day in 2024 June was 735, and it has decreased quite a bit to 614 in June 2025. So just to say that you can select all these scenarios, you can look at all these things, and you can also look at depots if you want to see breakdowns at a certain depot, if you want to see the kilometers traveled at a certain depot, or which depot is probably running more kilometers. All of those things is also something that you can just select and look at after this in this drop down. Um, so I think with that, I have quickly finished the demonstration of the dashboard. This is quick, but we'll be sharing the link, of course, with all of you. Now, this is going to be a public dashboard, and we love to hear what you find out once you log into it, what your feedback is. But I think in terms of the demonstration, I'll end it over here.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Shweta, for a very comprehensive and a very quick demonstration. So next we will be having a very brief PPT from Ashfaq, who is the country head and the director of Domo India, who will be sharing more about the dashboard and the broader intent behind it. I would just like to reiterate for the people who have joined a little later, after Ashfaq's brief PPT and presentation, we will be having a third section, which is Ranjit Gadgil, the program director of Parisar, who will be giving us key insights from the data of PMPML's of the year 2025. And then all of the questions that we have now, please keep them coming. And after Ranjit sir's presentation or the brief overview of 2025 data, we will be taking up those questions. So yeah, over to you, Ashfaq.
Thank you, Tanzil, and thank you, Shweta, for taking us through the detailed dashboard. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in and taking your valuable time for this session today. I appreciate all the effort that the Parisar team has put in collaboration with Domo, and giving us an opportunity to be on this platform, to be able to showcase the capabilities that Domo as a product, as a cloud native software as a service platform that functions as an all-in-one business intelligence and data ecosystem. Domo is designed to unify data, people, and systems into a single operating system for businesses that allows users to manage their entire organization from a computer or a mobile device. I'll touch upon the core functionalities, and then I would want to talk about certain use cases uh, from our existing set of clients globally who have benefited, especially clients into the transport business and transport entities like PMPML, and we'll talk about certain key metrics and the problem statements and the business benefit these organizations were able to derive. But before that, as an end-to-end platform, Domo is or handles the entire data life cycles in terms of data integration, It offers over 1,000 plus pre-built connectors, including popular softwares or systems like Salesforce, Snowflake, SAP, and it has the ability to ingest data from cloud apps as well as from on-prem databases, spreadsheet, without extensive IT involvement. So that gives us a low-code, no-code ability where even a savvy user, a data savvy user, be able to use the platform on their own. Data transformation, which we also popularly call as ETLs, where users can clean and combine their data using magic ETL feature of Domo, and also a drag and drop visual builder, or use the code based options like SQL, Python, and R for more complex transformation. It also provides real-time visualization, converts raw data into interactive, real-time dashboards and reports. We also call them as cards, with over 150 chart types to track the KPIs and business performance that we just saw for the PMPML performance. Domo also offers AI and machine learning capabilities. It integrates the AI chat for natural language queries, features, agent catalysts for building autonomous AI agent and automate the workflows and decision making. And very recently, the app creation through its App Studio is something that users can build low code, pro code custom analytics applications tailored to specific business processes and also some collaboration features. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have certain use cases that the audience here would be interested in and find useful. Allow me a moment. Okay. Uh, Tanzil, can you give me a check if my screen is visible?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Thank you. So I'll be talking about some data-powered transformation in transport domain that Domo has worked in the past. How a client, a bus and a motor company, as well as a client that operates a fleet of trucks, benefited with the real-time intelligence they built using Domo. Two different transport companies, a different line of businesses, one platform, and measurable results. So for our client A, they were able to enhance their performance to 99%, at the same time reducing their maintenance costs by 22% and having a real-time fleet visibility. For the other client, it's on-time delivery of the goods, plus increase in the revenue per mile, and at the same time reduction in the safety incidents that they reported. This is a long slide, but I would come on to some key metrics that this is a bus operator in Australia. Uh, Problem statement that situation before Domo, disconnected data silos, reports took more than 3+ days to generate even a simple report, no real-time fleet visibility to the stakeholders, uncontrolled fuel and maintenance spend, and route performance was more of a guesswork. And if you look at predominantly, these are the common thread or common situation that any bus company, bus and a motor company would experience, and there could be a lot of similarities between the PM and PMPML data that we looked at. Uh, so the key use cases that were deployed is to improve the fleet performance, enhance the fuel cost intelligence, route profitability analysis, and more so maintenance and predictive alerts. So we'll just look at the results, and that is something that the stakeholders here would be interested in, that before and after, what are the key metrics that the company was able to achieve in terms of on-time performance, their fuel efficiency, lowering the maintenance costs, report preparation time, which is really a game changer, where stakeholders, key decision makers, and executives be able to see the data in real time, and that too even on mobile, because of that's one of the key features that Domo offers, and it's 100% automated. You connect to the data source, and you have the data if coming in real time, and your reports and the performance dashboards getting updated or getting refreshed depending upon the frequency that you would want to set, especially in terms of the predictive capabilities, reducing the unplanned breakdowns, which means more uptime, higher availability of the buses for riderships, and route utilization data that helps key decision makers and the management team to optimize the fleet performance. And this is something that we have a narration from the general manager of this company that says that Domo gave us single version of the truth for the first time. Their operations, finance, and fleet teams were looking at the same numbers and acting on them in the real time. So it provides that integration capabilities where you have different departments which usually would operate in silos, would be able to see and have visibility to the single instance of truth. These are some key visualizations, and some of them we've already seen with the PMPML data. I'll talk about another long haul freight and logistic operator in North America. And then the challenge that they faced was fragmented systems across 15 terminals, reporting manual, slow, and many a times just no reporting, driver safety blind spots, revenue leakage, billing errors, and end-to-end shipment visibility for their customers. Large as compared to the bus operator in Australia, slightly larger number of trucks in the fleet, more number of drivers, high revenues, and different terminal locations. The use cases that we deployed was to have real-time fleet and dispatch board, driver safety scorecard, the revenue per mile dashboard for assessing or analyzing the revenue per mile that the company was able to achieve, and automated customer reporting for enhanced client satisfaction. So the results pretty much visible. The deliveries improving, or the on-time delivery rate improving by 12% or 12 points. The revenue per mile increasing by about 18%. Driver safety incidents reduced by 35%. Client was able to achieve a billing accuracy, enhanced billing accuracy with over 5+ points. Reporting cycle for the customers was fully automated, real-time visibility to the shipments, and compliance violations were reduced by close to 67%. And then the client narration, where prior to Domo, they were flying blind across the different terminals. Their VP of operations was able to see every truck, every driver safety scorecard, as well as the customer service level agreements before they got off their morning call. So in summary, two companies, one platform, consistent results, and this is something that the Parisar team has tried to also build for the PMPML, that gives insights, detailed insights to the performance data, as well as the predictive analytics capabilities, where the key stakeholders be able to make data-driven decisions. And then in summary, why Domo? Of course, there are other platforms too, but Domo offers pre-built transport connectors, which is 150+ connectors for transport management system, telematics, ERP, fuel cards, and ticketing systems. It provides a unified single source of truth, absolutely no IT bottleneck, the mobile-first capability for the field teams, where they'd be able to view the scorecard, the dashboards on their mobile or tablets, and the return on investment is in weeks or even days, and definitely not months. So that's in summary, business intelligence, how it can make an impact, positive impact to the transport companies that moves at the speed of your fleet. Tanzeen, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ashwa, for giving us a very good understanding of what the Domo platform is able to do, especially with transport data and how it can help. Thanks a lot.
Thank
And
you.
now we have Ranjit Gargil, who is the program director at Parisar. He will walk us through the key insights of the data from 2025. Yes, over to you, Ranjit, sir.
Thank you, Tanzil, and thank you, Ashfaq, for giving us a sense. I mean, I think it's really important for us to recognize that I think what we're doing here today is just scratching the surface of what is possible. I think what we've done is essentially taken a first stab of at least turning those large data sheets into something which is a bit more nimble and which will give us a bit more information and insights into how this transport company is working. Um, I think it's going to take a lot more effort for us to get PMPML to the point where they can really start driving efficiency. And for a public transport company, that really means the quality of the service that they're able to provide to the consumer, the customer, the everyday commuter. And I wanted to also just take 30 seconds to say that for us, having a sustainable city where we can reduce air pollution, we can reduce crashes, we can have a more walkable, cyclable cities, all actually centered around how well PMPML performs. In the absence of a good public transport company, all these other things that we desire and we are pushing for, they become really difficult. And which is why I think there's been a lot of effort on our part to constantly try and push for improvements in PMPML. And we'll take a look at the snapshot of 2025, which was the last year, and also try to see whether there were improvements compared to 2024, for instance. And what we would like to ideally see is that there's a constant improvement in that. One of the things that we focus on a lot is just how many buses does the city transport company have. I think Shweta mentioned this earlier, but here you can clearly see, without perhaps looking at the numbers in detail, that largely you can see that over the last year, the total bus fleet numbers have not changed a whole lot. Some variations that you see are typically because new buses are added, some new buses are bought, but then often old buses are also discarded. So on an average, one finds that the number of buses doesn't change a whole lot. What you do see here quite easily is the trend that PMPML seems to be going from owned buses to hired buses. We can see that whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I think is a matter of both judgment and then deciding how you decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And in fact, you can see that PMPML has reduced their owned buses from 900 plus to 600, which is about a 30% decrease in the number of owned buses. And we've seen a slightly higher increase in the number of hired buses, so that on an average, the fleet strength has remained more or less flat. And like I mentioned, there was a peak in July, and the lowest number of buses in February. These numbers have varied from about 1,000 from one another. 100 from one another, and is usually linked to, like I said, induction of new buses which come in to the PMPML fleet from time to time. Yeah. Next. Are the number of buses enough? And I know there's a question also related to that. The metric that we have been using, and this is one of the few instances where we actually have a metric. We don't always have a metric, which is that the Ministry of Urban Development has said that you should have about 60 buses per 1 lakh urban population. And so if you look at the population of the larger PMRDA region, which is served by PMPML, we find that the number of buses per lakh population hovers around this 21, 22 number. When there's an induction of buses, that number jumps up to about 23. When the buses go down, that goes down. But essentially, we are noticing that we're running at about 1/3 the number of buses that are required if you really want to have a robust public transport system. A lot of people don't know this, but there's a difference between the number of buses that are owned by the company, which is the bus fleet number, and the number of buses that are actually on road. And this is important because, as you can see at the beginning of the year, this number was about 82%. So only 82% of the bus fleet was actually running on the road. This has gone down as far as 76%, but now seems to be at a much more robust 90%. Imagine that if you have a bus fleet of 2,000 buses, and if you can improve your on-road buses by 9% or 10%, that means you can have an additional 200 buses on the road at any given time. So there's one thing which is to have more buses, and it's another thing to make sure that your maintenance schedules, etc., are good enough that you're having a maximum number of buses actually on road. Fewer buses, of course, means more crowded buses. It means more waiting time, and these are all the things that discourage people from actually using buses. Yeah, good. This essentially tells us how they plan. So usually they plan a certain number of routes. That's, in a sense, you could say that the planned kilometers are what ideally you should be having with the number of buses that you have. And what this is telling you is that about only 88% of the planned kilometers get executed. In and of itself, this is not a bad number. At least it's not as bad as 50%, but certainly this is a number that needs to go up. This is going to be impacted by bus breakdowns. It's going to be impacted by traffic congestion, so that if you've planned that this bus will make 5 trips on the route that it is assigned to during the day, but because of traffic congestion, if it is only able to complete 4 trips, then of course that many kilometers are not being fulfilled, and therefore people are getting a lower degree of service. It hasn't improved a whole lot from 2024. There has been a push by PMPML over the years to start new routes. This is largely because the city of Pune is expanding, and there is also a constant demand by people who are living on the peripheries of the city to have some sort of a public bus connectivity. So often new routes are started, routes are also changed. But overall, we find that there were almost, from 380 routes, we went to about 408 routes, which would be a good news because you want more routes, you want more direct connectivity. But if the number of buses has not gone up, then that means that you're probably servicing each route less, with less number of buses, which means that your frequency is going to get impacted. And I think that's an experience that a lot of Punekars have. Shweta mentioned this in June last year, in 2025, after a long time, the bus fares were hiked, and I think this graph clearly tells you that where you were getting about 1 crore per day in ticket sales, that number jumped to about 1.38 crores per day in ticket sales. So on one hand, you would say that this is an obvious outcome of the fare hike. We will see ahead that one would expect, and we will see that going ahead, that the ridership has gone down. The real question is that if the ridership goes down and the fare goes up, does the transport company end up making more money or not? And actually what we've seen is that they do make more money. What this graph tells you, and this is an example of where we can compare 2024 to 2025. And as Shweta explained, this is important. Ridership for a transit company, for a public transport company, usually is cyclical. So you can't do a month-on-month comparison. So after the fares went up, you can't say, well, what happened to the ridership? Because typically August is a very high ridership month in any case. And so really a year-on-year comparison is what you want to look at. And I think the numbers here show that there was already a declining trend in terms of ridership, even before the fare hike. And after the fare hike, we've seen that ridership go down even further. And this then translates into, and somebody asked this question also on the chat box, that do we have the number of passengers per bus per day? For every bus that's running in PMPML, what are the average number of passengers, which essentially means tickets that are being sold on that bus in a day? Because that's that bus's earning capacity. And what we have seen is that after June, which is when the fare hike went into effect, essentially the number of passengers per bus went down from, getting close to 800. I think 800 is a number that a lot of transport experts think is a healthy number to have, which we have seen go down, even dipping below 600, and now at around 600 passengers per bus per day. Each one of those passengers is paying more money. So therefore, PMPML is still making more money, but we are definitely noticing a reduction in the number of passengers. So this begs the question, was the fare hike a success? And as people who want more people to be riding the bus, we are saying it didn't succeed because it led to a decrease in the number of passengers. For PMPML, whose metric was we want to reduce our losses, and which is why I think Shweta was talking about the economics of, or the financials of the transport company. They would say that it was a success because they've managed to raise more revenue, thereby reducing their losses. Now, this is where we as a public have to make a judgment as to whether this was the right metric in the first place. Where is this money coming from? There has been, so there are two things to look at here. And like Shweta explained, the statistical sheets give you a plethora of information of where these revenues are coming from. There's passes and there's tickets. These are sort of the two large sources when it comes to ticket sales. There are a few other sources of income also, but they don't add up to a whole lot. So revenue from advertising, revenue from contracting out buses, etc., clearly form a very tiny fraction of the revenue for PMPML. Most of it is coming from people paying for it. And what we noticed is that, not surprisingly, since the ticket fares went up, the total traffic earnings went from about 629 crores in 2024 to 679 crores. So there was an increase of 50 crores in PMPML's revenues, even though their ridership went down. And so I think that's important to note. So they're at a place in the curve where they can actually increase fares, and even if that leads to less people, it still leads to more revenues for them. There has also been a general sense that a company like PMPML should be getting more money from passes. That's because of two reasons. One is that once a person buys a pass, you're sort of committed to using the bus for the whole month. So you're getting committed riders. And also it's money upfront. So because you have to pay for the price of the pass at the beginning when you purchase the pass. So for any company that is dealing with cash flow issues, the more upfront money you can get, it would be better. So actually, what can PMPML do to increase its share of revenue from passes is a question that this slide would beg. Yeah. We talked about bus breakdowns. This is done per 10,000 kilometers because obviously the bus fleet changes over the year. The total kilometers run also changes. So in order to normalize that, they typically look at bus breakdowns per 10,000 kilometers. We have this number, but unlike our buses per lakh population, we don't really know what the metric for this should be. And this is a question for researchers to find out what typically would constitute a good, healthy number in terms of bus breakdowns per 10,000 kilometers, either by looking at long distance companies, other bus companies like BEST or BMTC, or perhaps even companies abroad. Accidents is a matter of great concern because, as it is, road crashes are a matter of great concern. What, however, we do see is that for a bus fleet of more than 2,000 buses running all day, in extremely congested and chaotic traffic conditions. Luckily, the bus accident numbers aren't too high. But of course, every accident means that somebody loses their life or has a grievous injury. So all of these need to get reduced as close to zero as possible. I think we have, if you add up these numbers, you have about 43 accidents that took place in 2025. In 2024, if you again use the Domo platform to kind of extract that number, you'll find about 61 accidents happened last year. So in some ways, that's a fairly healthy reduction in the number of accidents, but of course, a lot more work needs to happen. So yeah, I mean, what does all this mean? What we would like to see is, I think 3 or 4 things going forward, and that's been our effort. One is that data should be available. It should be consumer-centric, commuter-centric. We want to see decisions being made by PMPML which are based and driven by this data. I think the examples that Ashfaq showed is that these are companies who will make decisions based on their data. And therefore, that's what really drives decision making. We often know that decision making in especially public transport, public owned entities can be quite politically driven or driven by vested interests. We don't want that to happen. We want it to be data driven. And I think I've seen some excellent suggestions on the chat box also that, can I see this or can I see that? Clearly, that data is also important, but currently that data is not being published. Often the bus companies will tell you that we have this data, we are collecting it, but we often will not have access to it. So I think, as Shweta mentioned in the beginning, the fact that we have this publicly available data allows us to do this kind of analysis. And therefore, not only should there be data, there should be data on more things. That data should be available publicly, and that data should be in formats where it can be analyzed. And lastly, I think we need to have metrics, we need to have benchmarks, and to see whether we're getting closer to those benchmarks. So every single parameter here should have an ideal value, and we should see a public transport company quarter after quarter getting closer to that ideal number. What those ideal numbers should be is a matter of something that transport experts will bring to the table. But I think that's the way that we would like to see this going forward. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ranjit sir, for a very quick and a very comprehensive overview of the data. Now we are well within our time, and we will be now taking up the questions that have been coming to us within the chat box. So Shweta, do you want to take a few questions up? A lot of them have been answered, but there are a few.
We tried to just answer a few while we were going through that. But I think the one after Animesh's question is answered.
So I'll tell you the latest one. Vilas has asked: is there a data available on the total operation cost versus total revenue? Is it publicly available?
Oh, the latest one. So PMPML actually publishes a financial sheet on their website, but it is in the form of a balance sheet. So it is a little difficult. It's not directly, very clear like the performance sheet that how much does it spend on operations and how much is the revenue. The revenue, we do understand at least from the ticketing and from the fines, a little bit from the sheet, but I don't think we have the revenue from advertisements on the buses or the bus stops included in this performance sheet data. So the answer is it's not very, very directly available with us. Do we have, so there's another question, which is, do we have revenue from AC versus non-AC buses? Not in the current format of the sheets, we don't. The buses are only divided in terms of ownership, recorded in terms of ownership. and fuel type. But this is again an interesting segmentation to ask for going ahead. So I think it's an interesting suggestion, but right now we don't have that.
I can add a little to that, just to say that AC buses in PMPML currently are essentially the electric buses. So I don't think that there are any non-electric buses that are air conditioned. And one of the important decisions taken by PMPML was not to have different fares for AC buses. So whether you ride an AC bus or a non-AC bus, you will be paying the same fare amount. And so essentially, if you want to look at, you know, the question would be, you know, is the corporation or is PMPML spending more money on AC buses as compared to non-AC buses? I think the easiest thing would be to just look at the revenue from the electric buses, look at the cost of running those electric buses, which is another question that has been asked, because we know quite clearly what is the fuel consumption in terms of electricity used for electric buses. And this is real on-road conditions. This is not some advertised number. This is 500 buses running every day on the cities in the city of Pune. We know the cost that they pay for the electricity. So it should be fairly easy to find out what is the cost per kilometer, at least from a fuel point of view, and therefore what is the revenue also. So yeah, I think we're just lucky that we have that segmentation in PMPM.
The next question is from Ashok sir. So yeah, I mean, we do know that you have been an ardent advocate of BRT, and so have we in Pune. But your question is that why? I mean, we've not really included any BRT specific documentation in the dashboard itself. So as I mentioned in the beginning, there are PMPML publishes these 3 sheets, one of which is a BRT performance sheet. But essentially, in the present condition, it is very difficult to make sense of what data out of it is really can be really believed to be BRT data, because BRT itself in Pune is not in place. It has been dismantled in many places, and it is mixed BRT on top of it. So there are the data itself is not something that is that can be very reliable. And we also spoke with the PMPML folks themselves that you have these 3 sheets, and then what does each of them have? And they also said that when BRT was started, at a lot of places, they had to give that data. And that's why they started making these 3 sheets. And they've just continued with that practice. But as of now, as things stand, the BRT statistic sheet itself is not something that we can use and we can confidently say that, this is the BRT ridership, because those buses are being used in BRT tracks as well as outside. And there's no exclusivity as of now that you can say. But definitely as a dashboard, I think it is, if we have that data, it is quite possible to look at it separately. Also something that we were thinking about, also this AC buses question that came up. I think it is of interest to look at the e-bus statistic sheet in more detail, in more granularity, and definitely something that can be added to the dashboard to say more about how the e-buses are performing in general on all the parameters. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Shweta. There is one question. There are a couple of questions that I'll read out. So the first question is by Vikrant. The required bus count per lakh is independent. Is it independent of metro configuration? So either Ranjit sir or Shweta, you can take it up. And then the second question is from Padmini. For designing these dashboards, how much of involvement of PMPML was needed for requirements or gathering or approvals?
I'll take the second question, but yeah, Ranjit sir can take the Vikrant's question. Yeah.
So the requirement or the benchmark of 60 buses per lakh population, I would say, is independent of whether the city has a metro system or not. Essentially, when you have smaller cities, buses will be the only public transport available, and therefore the point of 60 buses may well be valid. These buses may also be smaller buses in smaller towns and cities. When you get to a city the size of Pune or even larger, I think it is imperative that a very large mode share has to be borne by public transport. Otherwise, the city will simply not operate. So I would suggest that in addition to the metro, there should still be 60 buses per lakh population. And in fact, if you look at cities like Singapore and London and New York and what have you, who have very extensive metro rail systems, they have 100 buses per lakh population. So that's in addition to a fairly large metro network. So I think that we should be looking at about 60 buses at a minimum per lakh population for cities, irrespective of whether they have metro or not. Yeah.
Yes, and I'd just like to plug in one more thing over here because that's also something that we are currently a part of. But this whole buses and how many buses do we need and how is it related to the metro? I think all of this is also covered in a campaign that we are part of right now, which is Double the Bus campaign. And if you just go through whatever we worked on, I think it's evident that without a metro, with anything, all the other services that are there, buses are very, very non-negotiable, and that is a part of messaging that does not come out very clearly when we talk about buses. So that is something important, and I think it should be data agnostic in terms of understanding that buses are extremely crucial, irrespective of whatever else you have and whatever population of the city is. It's a tier 1, tier 2 city, irrespective. I think buses are quite non-negotiable. The question by Padmini she has asked that for designing these dashboards, how much has PMPML been on board? Honestly, to actually design the dashboard itself, we did not need any onboarding because the data was public and it was readily available. But at the same time, I think they are an important stakeholder here because it is their data and they are putting it out regularly, which is very, very important. But this dashboard actually elevates the data to a level where it can create more engagement with different stakeholders for PMPML themselves. So what we did was, once the dashboard was built, we did engage with PMPML and try to see, whether this is an idea that catches their interest. And we pitched it as it can be many things. Honestly, in the basic format, it can just be the way it is right now, sitting on their website, on their official website. So instead of those sheets, if somebody visiting their website can have a look at this, the impression of the bus service is very, very different from what it is right now. So just putting this data out on their website in the format that the way it is right now is one of the basic levels of engagement that we were pitching for. And then going ahead, of course, as Ashfaq has explained, that there are different levels and there are many things that Domo can do, and it can help in decision making at a much, much nuanced level. So that was the second pitch. But right now, I think just for the initial thing also that, just put this dashboard on the PMPML official website. It has, we are still in negotiation, we are still in conversations with them. It has not been a very smooth process, or it has not taken a lot of uptake. But that's the level of PMPML involvement right now at this stage. Yeah.
Okay, so this question has been answered by you, but this was asked twice by somebody else also. So Animesh has asked, can we get this data in Excel CSV format to download? And also, are the raw files of the PMPML data available, since the older versions might not be available now?
This is very, very important, and this I think we can easily do. Because you're right, on the PMPML website, you'll only see the last 3 months of data, and the months before that, if you've not downloaded, you're not going to get it. This is definitely something that can be added to the dashboard. And yeah, thank you for that suggestion.
I think this question by Santosh, I think, can be taken up by Ranjit sir. Are the hired buses under gross cost contract? Is that something that you would want to talk about?
Yes, they are under GCC. So all hired buses are leased on a per kilometer tender basis. So that's how they work. if there's a follow-up to that, I can answer. But yeah, essentially they're all GCC contracts with some escalation built into it in terms of fuel prices, etc., which is, I think, fairly standard in these kinds of contracts. But yeah, I mean, for those who don't know this, essentially, buses are rented by let's say in this case PMPML. BEST does the same thing. You will, as a commuter, not even know the difference that this is a rented bus. They look the same. The routes are decided by PMPML or BEST or whoever. The fares are decided by the transport company. The operator is only supposed to provide the bus with the driver and gets paid on a per kilometer basis. The buses also have a conductor, which is by the transport company. So they collect the money and then pay at the end of the month based on the billing. So that's how that works. Yeah.
And then there is a question about, but what about the road traffic congestion if there are 60 buses per lakh population? It is a comment come question.
Yeah, I mean, I think for those of us who are promoting buses, the bottom line is that for every bus that you put on the road, you are taking away people who would otherwise have used their own personal vehicles, either two-wheelers or cars, mostly two-wheelers, because getting car people to use a bus is a slightly more difficult task. But if you get 50 two-wheelers or 30 or 40 two-wheelers off the road and into a bus, then actually congestion levels will go down. And in India, in any city that you go to, you would have noticed that buses are absolutely full. So you're not even running empty buses, which might still be problematic. But if you have 30 people or 35 or 40 people on a bus, the comparison is that if those people had not been riding the bus, they would have been using a two-wheeler, which would have added to congestion. So actually congestion levels should drop with the increasing number of buses.
Okay, and there are two questions by Hema. Shweta, do you want to take them up?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just looking at the numbers themselves because one of the questions is very, very number specific. Do we see higher ridership retention among pass users compared to ticket users, especially after the fare hike? So let me just look at this and confirm in a bit. What was the second question? Hema,
Yeah.
is
Do
another
we
question?
have data on who is using passes, like students or others, and how their patterns differ? Can pass usage data help in better route planning and scheduling?
Right. So the PMPML sheet, it does give out bifurcated data on like segregated data on passes. It gives what kind of passes also, and those passes include your Pune Darshan bus passes and all kinds of passes that PMPML gives. At the dashboard, we are not really analyzing that. We've just looked at those three main things, which are monthly and daily passes, student passes, and your normal tickets, the daily tickets. The second part, can usage data help in better route planning and scheduling? I think it can, of course. I mean, because this is where we are also even basic data like how many men and women are using buses. That data can also help in understanding routes, route usage, scheduling of buses, and so on. So I think the granularity of data, as detailed data as you can get in terms of what these bifurcations are, what these divisions are, all of these feed into who is using the bus, when are they using the bus, how are they using the bus, time of the day. And the more data we have of this kind, it will all feed into the fact that you can design your bus services in a way which serve most of these stakeholders in a way which is more efficient. So definitely, and I think Ashfaq did not mention this, but Domo has also been used to do route scheduling and route deciding routes, also scheduling the trips for Sydney Metro to be able to make maximum use of the available of the resources that they have, the trips, the schedules, as well as the routes. So any kind of such data will help into scheduling and planning better, definitely. And I'll get back to you about the route, the retention of passes. I mean, people who are using passes after the fare hike in just a bit. Yeah. I think somebody also asked, I think Vilas asked whether metro data can be visualized using Domo. And this is very interesting because Ranjit sir, if you remember, you had mentioned that, can we also put in a metro data ridership thing right below the PMPML data ridership? Because there is, you could also probably make a correlation between the reduction in bus ridership and the increase in metro ridership, because those numbers also kind of match, to say that when you are saying that you're building a metro in a city and that will reduce pollution, that will reduce vehicles, what the metro might actually be doing is taking passengers or taking commuters from the bus service to the metro. So even to be able to make such correlations, and I know that there are many factors involved in this and it cannot be such a direct assumption, but we had considered looking at metro data also, especially the ridership data in this dashboard. But then we decided that let's keep this very PMPML specific, because there's a lot of focus and attention that also needs to go into this. But definitely, as a platform and as something that can be done, it can definitely be done because we have metro ridership data.
I just wanted to add to that, actually PMPML does a much better job of publishing their data in terms of the sheer number of parameters that Shweta talked about when she showed those sheets. Metro, on the other hand, has been a lot more opaque in terms of publishing data. They probably have much more robust systems working behind the scenes. We do know that they have fairly sophisticated systems, but when it comes to sharing that data, they're a little more difficult. So you will find on their website, for instance, daily ridership numbers, but you will not find any of the other parameters. In fact, we have been able to get from them the sort of per station hourly ridership numbers. And that's critical because public transport is actually all about peak ridership. It's not about averages. It's about how many people can you carry at peak traffic times. And that kind of analysis would be super cool to do. We have the data, but we have not actually done. And I think there's one question that perhaps Ashfaq, you can take up, I think, if you are able to see it.
Sure. I'm just looking at the question.
So Padmini has asked us that
How we
if
also
you
use
have
Domo
worked
for
with this.
traffic analysis and not on the bus dashboard. Yeah. So yes, I think as a platform, Domo has the ability, and since we've been talking about data, if you have the data available, the right set of data available, Domo has the ability to perform analytics around the traffic situation. And I think to envisage the future state, what Ranjit mentioned is you have disparate systems, and Domo has the ability to bring data from all the disparate systems and be able to produce one single consolidated dashboard for the entire city of Pune. Yes, that is doable, that is possible, but provided that we have access to all of that data.
And yes, for the last, I think there's a question from Shruti. What about the data hygiene? How do we ensure high accuracy?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an important question, which is why I think with the BRT, we've been a bit not so sure about the quality of that data because we don't know what it means anymore. When it comes to the electric buses data and the regular bus service data, what we can say is that they've been pretty consistent in their formats. And if you do self internal consistency checks, they come out quite well. So if you look at all individual depot data and then you add it up, it sort of all adds up. If you do all the calculations across the rows, that that sort of makes sense. So there seems to be internal consistency. Whether this data accurately reflects what is happening on the ground would have to be done, I think, as a separate exercise. But at least we do notice, for instance, we saw that what happened with the fare hikes, and we immediately saw that that got reflected in the data sheet. So it certainly is happening. If there are some systemic errors that are creeping in, I don't think that we would be in a position to comment on that. I think some sort of a data audit or something like that would be required by a third party to make sure that there is that level of accuracy and data hygiene. They're actually, I would say, they're a little bit better than Metro, because actually with Metro the data tends to be a lot less reliable actually. At least what they put out, and if you get some information from them separately, those things don't match. So there's more problems with Metro data than there is with PMPML data.
And just one last question. I think we may have missed it. It's a question by Varun. Anything on bus route rationalization? Do you want to comment anything on that?
So if the question is, do they do route rationalization? We don't think they do. They do change routes, but I would not call that as route rationalization. Route rationalization would mean a much more comprehensive exercise of looking at where your people are, what your routes are, and can you get more efficiency by making a choice of multiple routes, overlapping routes. Can you have some routes which are high frequency routes up to a certain point, and then beyond that you have low frequency routes that leads to more connections. So what are the costs of each connection? So those kinds of exercises are route rationalization. Can also be with bus scheduling. When do you start releasing buses in the morning? When do you end those trips? All of that. I think so whether PMPML does that or not, I think the question is that they don't do it as rigorously as they should. And I think that shows up in inefficiencies in their route planning. They're also running a lot of buses to places which are very remote. Often those buses are running at far less load factors, as they call them, which is okay. There should be public transport connectivity in the peripheral areas of the city, but of course not at the expense of the people who are within the city who are also desperate for public transport services. So that would be the answer to that. And I think platforms like Domo, and of course there are other more sophisticated route rationalization softwares which they can use to do this. But they need to do it. And it would, in fact, so that's the other thing. We know that there are less buses. So at least the less buses that you have, if you must then use them as efficiently as possible. And I think there's scope of improvement on both sides.
Okay, thanks a lot. That was the last question that we would be taking. Thank you all for joining us and being such an engaging audience. We really enjoyed. We have been wanting to do this for quite some time, and there were certain discussions about doing this in person only in Pune. But then we decided that a lot more people would be interested, data enthusiasts, members of the public who want to engage with civic data, who would be very interested in doing this. So we thought of going online for this. And we have certain links that we have sent. Do share your experience of after using the dashboard, and do use it for your research purposes, and do let us know how you find it. Thank you.